epilepsy at a young age, developmental challenges. So their charities towards research for that.
Could you speak a little louder?
Oh.
Thank you so much.
And for the academics, there's more learning going. Students have said that there's more learning going on like outside of school compared to last year, they think. Teachers, they also think teachers give more work and answer more questions than lectures. There wasn't really a consensus on whether that was a good or a bad thing. At the high school, honors band started. It's the same period as like standard band, but it's graded like an honors class. There are some requirements for being an honors band, like participating in an audition and a festival.
So for the juniors at the high school, NHS invitations are starting to go out, and that process has started up. And then the 8th grade leadership summit went well. I don't know if you guys heard of why you guys, but basically some 8th graders in the middle school leadership program came to the high school, and members of the link leader group at the high school, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, met with them, kind of gave them the tour and discussed leadership opportunities at both the middle and the high school. And I was there, like that went pretty well. The 8th graders were they're happy that it happened during active school hours versus like a barren building, just because they got to see kind of like the high school in action. And to them, it felt like it was a lot less intimidating than if you had gone in like the empty halls. Everything looks so much bigger than it is at the middle school. So starting in 8th grade, course selection for the high school is open to be looked at by parents and students. This happened recently, and the goal of that is to make it more accessible and kind of to provide more knowledge for incoming freshmen, so they kind of know what's going on a little bit before they need to, so that they're more prepared.
Extracurricular things. The Shoreline Music Festival had their first rehearsal last Thursday on the 6th. That's a festival for all the schools in the Shoreline that participate, and students from these schools go to Coggins High School and they practice last Thursday for a performance next Thursday. It happened on last Thursday. It was from our school left at 2 p.m. and went to 8 p.m. And like I said, yes. And next rehearsal is on the 13th, and we're leaving at 12, and then ends at around 9-ish. Several OSHS students are participating, mostly upperclassmen. There is one freshman, I think.
Couple sophomore.
The OSHS band separately has their own performance, so everybody in the band on the 20th. And this isn't a big concert. Instead, it's small student-led groups. And we've been practicing since the beginning of the year, and we'll be performing in these small groups for the concert. It's sort of going to be like Taj, like the Theater Arts and Jazz Night. People will perform, the audience can walk around. Spirit Week starts at the high school on the 21st. As part of that, the blood drive on Friday is on the 28th. Homecoming is also on that 28th. And the OSHS has their winter play performances on November 12th, 13th, and 14th, I think. Yes, and they're performing Murder on the Orient Express.
So it was not included with the packet, but we have a sports report. The boys soccer and field hockey teams have qualified for the state tournament. Girls soccer is working their way through a tough season. They're 1-4-2, and they played. Well, this is as of last Friday, so they played Cromwell on Friday and North Branford today. Boys soccer is an undefeated 8-0 so far, ranking them second in the state for Class S high schools. They played NFA last Saturday and North Branford on Monday. Field hockey is 5-2-1, and they play Suffield. They played Suffield on Friday and Valley Regional this evening. And OSW football is off to an unfortunate 0-4 start. They played Quebec this past Saturday, and this upcoming week is their bye week. Any questions?
So I didn't realize is band, you don't get credit for band like this, the graduation credit. I thought was more extracurricular.
You get, yeah, you
Or just a
get,
class.
you get credit for band, but with this honors,
Just new done.
yeah, it's a new kind of program to have it be weighted as an honors class, but with that comes kind of extra work that you need to do with the class, like any other honors course at the high school. Before it was weighted the same as like a regular college prep class.
And if she's interested in joining.
Yeah, we have representation, so it's band and chorus now. Kids can take either as CP or as honors credit. And so the requirement is, just like in an honors class, you're covering the same kind of general curriculum, but you're expected to go to a deeper level and put in some extra work. So students that would like honors credit, they express interest, they signed up, they have to, on their own time, learn a solo for their instrument, audition for a festival. This is not, their honors credit is not contingent upon them getting in, right? Because festivals are competitive, but they put in the work and they get coached. And then in the spring at one of our college nights, most likely they'll perform part or all of their solos. Some of the solos are very long. So they'll also have to get a public performance aspect with it. So their classes meet during the same period. And if we have students who would like honors credit but already take band and chorus, because we allow students to do that kind of dual enrollment, they are only expected to do this extra work on one of their instruments, whether it's a voice or a physical outside of your body instrument. It's fun. We have, oh, I don't know the number off the top of our head, but we have a significant number of enrollment. It's nice.
I do it, yeah.
And so do you have enough enrollment for the general or college credit?
Well, the classes meet simultaneously. It's
No, I
just
understand. I just know that we have a small student body, so I was just curious. You can still do your concerts with.
yeah, because like, so Elliot's enrolled in band honors and it still meets at the same time. It's still period 5.
The whole band is meeting, just some of the band is.
Elliot's just got
I
extra
understand
band
that.
homework.
That's not my question. My question was, because we have a small student enrollment in general at the high school, does that, putting students in honors pull from some of the concerts that you can do for the,
Not at all. Band and choir enrollment are still happy as ever.
okay, so there's still,
Yep.
you still enough.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thanks, thank you guys so much. Thank you. Next on our agenda is our correspondence.
So we didn't receive any correspondence this week. We just have the Rambler, which I'm going to pass out.
Is the Rambler still electronic? It started last year being electronic for you guys,
I
right?
don't think it is.
It's short-lived.
They might do both, but I've seen the paper copies. So.
Yeah, I do.
Sometimes they write about it.
Oh, don't worry. You'll-
So I have one.
I've got some. on this paper.
I do remember seeing the electronic copy, but last year I did get the paper as well.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are meeting minutes. Looking for a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of September 27th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Oh.
Before we vote, I think that I have a question. In the minutes, it says that the homecoming is the 29th, and in the student report tonight, it says it's on the 28th. So I don't know if that's it was moved. Okay, so not a typo.
That's 28.
Now it is, yeah, but it wasn't.
Which
Thank you.
The documents were correct as they were at the time they were
They
written.
were
Yeah.
right, yeah.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Second page, it's bold above the word clubs. There you go.
Probably should paginate it next time.
Sorry, there's my hand.
That's okay. That's your pages. Yeah. Thanks.
Questions? No? So, those in favor of the minutes? Those opposed? Abstentions? Next item on our agenda is the Washington DC trip presentation. We'll start with that.
Well, this is a trip that kind of got suspended over the last few years because of COVID, but it is a trip that I think our students really look forward to and that the high school would like to offer again this year. And you have a memo describing when and the terms under which, and Mr. Anastasio, our acting principal, and Megan Payne, who is our head advisor for this group and also social studies teacher at the high school, are here to do a presentation. And Trent, you probably can put up the presentation. Thank you.
Actually, you know what? Megan, if you could share the presentation if you would like to drive it, or I can put it up as well.
Let me, I think I have it up. Let me, I can,
Share it if you prefer.
oh, that's, now I've lost that. Yeah, why don't you do that? I'm not as familiar with Zoom. Sorry. Thank you.
It's always good to let Trent drive, I think.
I tried looking for it and it took me all these different places.
Sorry.
Is it, okay. Thank you. So as Ms. Peruccio said, I am Megan Payne, and this is my 15th year teaching at Old Saybrook High School and will be, if I counted correctly, I think my 9th year, hopefully going on this trip. I love this trip. I'm very passionate about it, and I incorporate it into all of my classes. I teach 3 U.S. history courses this year. Typically, that's on average what I teach. And in all of my classes, I try and incorporate topics and ideas that we would be immersed in should we be able to go on the trip. Trent, you can forward. So the goals of this, really the biggest goal is just to build memories. The students are so excited to have the opportunity to go. They've been asking me basically since their freshman year if they would have the opportunity to go. And then of course, COVID hit, and this is the current seniors. COVID hit, and of course, as juniors, they were not given the opportunity, but they really still wanted to try. So I don't want to take it away from the junior year because it is typically associated with the U.S. history curriculum, but I really want to give these seniors an opportunity to also get the same experience. It is a great opportunity for class bonding. Everything that we do is together, which I'll go over some of the events later on. But I think even better is getting the juniors and the seniors together. I've seen them in classes together, and you really can't tell the difference between the juniors and the seniors because they are so tight-knit, and I like to see that. It also gives access to the nation's capital. A lot of students have never been there or experienced it. And then from the historical perspective, to have an actual guided tour of the Capitol and to see everything that we've talked about in actually both civics and US history just gives them a greater opportunity to make the connections to our current studies. Next. Thank you. So connections to our strategic plan. One of the greatest ones, of course, is high quality instruction. And ultimately, this is because so much of what I do in class connects to what we're going to be seeing. We go to the World War II Memorial, which we get to in the spring in our studies. We also go to the FDR Memorial, which we get to when we talk about the New Deal. And it actually, while you go through, you experience the entire New Deal and all of the implementations that he made in his years while he was president. We also go to the Mlk Memorial, which we talk about with the civil rights movement. We get to experience the Lincoln Memorial and talk about his inaugural speeches, which are both on the sides. And the students always enjoy looking at them, of course, taking pictures with them, but also just seeing kind of the image ingrained in their heads about what Lincoln looks like and how I always call him a political genius in class just because of what he did, but to actually see him up here as a political genius, kind of overseeing all of DC. They also do get to have some fun, but a lot of it is guided tour. We also, I just finished a unit about the Civil War, and we go to Arlington National Cemetery, which was Lee's homestead, and we read an article about how General Lee's homestead was taken from him by the Union Army and what that looked like, and how they created the Arlington National Cemetery while it was technically still Lee's land, and the battle to try and win it back. And so the kids actually go there, and they always like point out, oh, there's Lee's home up on the top of the hill. And of course it has the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is just an amazing place to visit and really sink in. There is, of course, a lot of connection also to English 10 and English 11, I've been told, with what they do in their courses. And the readings that they do are associated closely. And then, of course, safe and supportive environment. We like to think that we are providing them with a culturally rich experience offered to all students and making sure that it's as inclusive as possible. Next. So to building goals, first and foremost, student voice. This was because of them. They've, like I said, been asking for it, and last year was no different. They were the ones who asked for it to happen. They were the ones kind of guiding my charge and leading me to take it back on. And I told them if they can get the numbers up and they can get the support for it from the students, then I will take it on, and that's why I'm here. And like I said, it's experiential learning. And so much of what they do, they're immersed in the curriculum. They're getting the firsthand experience. They really, really enjoy listening to the guided tours, but also seeing kind of history come alive in DC. Next. So statistics, I performed a Google form last year at the end of the year. And I basically told the students, if I am running with this, I need to make sure I have at least 100 students between the two classes. And that was not an issue. In fact, I had students coming to me regularly to check in that they had the 100. And making sure that we got the numbers because they really wanted to make it happen. So when it did happen, I did get to inform them like, yes, we're moving forward. And in the past years, we're looking at roughly, give and take, there are a few years when students could not attend because of prior commitments, but roughly 88% of the students, this is typically in just the junior class. So I don't know what it would be like for junior, senior, but roughly 88% of the student body attends the trip. Thank you. So successes. We do have two options for insurance this time. So there's the cancel for any reason insurance, which ultimately covers 75% of the cost. And that includes COVID, and you don't need any documentation, and you can cancel up to the morning of the trip. That is $43.80 because it's a 7.01% on the cost. However, there is an alternative option this year, which typically hasn't been run. And that's a standard insurance, which would cover 100% of the payment. And it's based on health and family illness. It does need documentation from a doctor. And that's only 4.55% of the cost, which would be $28.43. They are both optional. Mr. Anastasio and I were talking today about what we would do. Typically, we included it in the cost, but this year everything is online, and they would be registering online and paying online, and everything goes through the company. And so at the end, it gives them the option. They do have to commit to one if they are electing to do one when they sign up. So this is something I would have to make sure I include in the letter home to parents to make sure that it is clear from the very beginning what they would be signing up for. The accommodations are in close proximity. We are in Alexandria, Virginia, very close to the Capitol, very close as far as getting in and out of the city quickly. We do have security on site. There will be security on our floors throughout the night. We do have a travel guide who comes with us from OSHS and comes down to DC with us. And then there's a licensed DC guide who meets us down in DC and takes us on the various tours. Thank you. Some of the challenges that I am sure we are going to run into is chaperones. You are missing, it is scheduled for a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday and Friday, just missing school can be tough, though junior teachers, you won't have a lot of students that you're missing. And then giving up a Saturday is tough for some people, especially with family commitments. And then overall cost due to prices right now, gas costs, everything is higher. So this is the highest cost that we've ever seen for the trip. And we anticipate that there will be struggles to financially support it. So like I said, the students would register online. That's the link to actually click into it. I've already registered myself and made myself the head chaperone, so I can access it at any time. And I'm in close contact with our travel agent, Trish Labar, who also can make any changes as I see fit. I will need the students to complete and sign forms. I will be sending home information to the parents, of course, to tell them all of this before they do the sign up. The nurse will also need to be made aware of the students who will be traveling so that she has the medical needs and prepared. Hopefully, maybe she would be able to attend the trip. She has in the past. Parent informational meeting will be held. This is typically about a month out so that we can go over all the questions and concerns that they might have and kind of the breakdown of what the trip will look like. And then finally, the night before we do a luggage drop off, it is typically held at the school, roughly giving them about 1.5 to 2 hours so that they drop the luggage off the night before. And then they bring their carry-ons the next day. And then I just included some images. These are some past trips, the Mlk Memorial. This is front of the Lincoln Memorial. There's class photos. We do a lot of class photos. And then individual photos, as the bottom photo was one of my American Studies classes. They wanted to take a picture together. And then the Vietnam War Memorial, which the kids are always just impressed at the 58,000 names all scrolled out and how it progressively gets smaller and larger. There's also the annual White House photo. We stop there every time to take a picture and the kids look forward to it. We usually do a chaperone picture there as well. The Korean War Memorial, we're usually, hopefully by March, we'd actually be teaching about the Cold War and they'll be learning about that as they're seeing it. We also have added in the Pentagon Memorial. We attend the Pentagon and they usually get about 30 minutes to just kind of walk around and take it in. It's a really somber experience and most students are very respectful and mindful of what they're being exposed to. And then the World War II Memorial, usually it's kind of like the picture happy place. It's just kind of beautifully set up and there's places to just sit down and be kind of within the memorial, take in the sights, take in the experiences, look at all the states that were involved. It's just kind of a tranquil place. And speaking of tranquil places, probably one of the kids' favorite spots is the Arlington National Cemetery. I always love going in the fall, which is why I included the picture with the leaves on the ground. We will be going in March, so it will look more like the other picture with no leaves on the ground and the dead trees, but it is still beautiful no matter how you look at it. And then at the bottom is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We usually get to see a changing of the guard, timing it perfectly. We get there so we can see the entire experience. And the kids have always been respectful of the ceremony that goes on. And then these are just pictures that I've taken throughout the years, kind of background photos of the monuments and experiences that the kids will have. Questions?
I'd like to start by making a motion to approve the Washington DC trip as presented.
discussion?
First of all, Megan, I just want to say I admire your enthusiasm. This presentation couldn't have been better, and I remember going as a student. So I just think that this is going to be such an authentic experience for the kids, and I wholeheartedly support it. And thank you for taking this on. It is a daunting task.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Megan, I'm just wondering, how many chaperones are you looking for? Do you open it up to parents if need be, or how do, or, you know, what's?
Karen, are you
It's a lot.
interested?
Or board of ed members.
We typically, looking back at the ratio, we typically try to do 15-1. Based on initial numbers, I'll be looking at roughly 10 chaperones. I do have Amber Sherber. I'm also senior class advisor. So Amber Sherber is the other advisor, so she has already signed up with me. I am looking to also reach out to the junior class advisors just so they have that feel with their classes. And then beyond that, I have had some teachers reach out to me, but some of them have been a little non-committal. I don't know that we've ever had parents. We have had paraprofessionals attend the trip. We have had the nurse attend the trip. We have had secretarial staff attend the trip. I don't know what the, yes, and always an administrator, yes.
With an administrator. And we don't usually use parents or others because we have to do all the background checking and we have to do a lot of things. So we prefer to stay with staff, any staff that, you know, can be, yeah.
Your question, Jim, before.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Mrs. Payne, what was the dates of the trip again?
Great question. That is March 23rd to the 25th. And that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe.
Megan, I just wanted to congratulate you on a very comprehensive presentation. I think you covered every base that I could even think of, but more importantly, I appreciated your thoughtfulness and attention to the specific monuments and what you're teaching in your classes. So there's really some practical knowledge when they get there, and then you're going to be with them and say, remember this, remember that, which is really significant. I really appreciate the hard work that you're putting into making it relevant. And I think that's always about student voice. What are we doing that's relevant? Why do we do this? What can we remember? What can we share when we get back home? If somebody says, oh, why did you go to that memorial? They should be able to tell you, well, because of this, 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 and this. Well, what is a memorial? So thank you for doing that. I question two questions. One, if there's students that can't afford it, is there a thought, and maybe this is a Jan question, for approaching the Educational Foundation, you know, for monies, if they would be willing to support some students? I don't know if the high school, you know, has funds for students who are limited financially, so it's just a question.
Great question. I have in the past actually reached out to several organizations. The Lions Club has also been very supportive of the trip, Old Saybrook Ed Foundation. And then we also had, and I have to look into it again, a couple years ago, we made a scholarship fund, and the scholarship fund was meant for basically students who couldn't afford yearbooks, couldn't afford trips, couldn't afford different things that kind of coincide with high school. I haven't also mentioned it, but we were going to look at when we were also instituting dues, we were looking at could that be associated with it. In addition to that, the cost is higher than normal, but we did have $2,000 already in the fund, which I used as a down payment. And so that also, I was told at the very end, if we do have enough money to cover the costs. Usually the cost is also incurring not filling rooms. If we only have 3 students per room, it's an extra charge. So the baseline charge that we've been given is incurring those extra fees. So if that is not given, there will be money that we can also give back to families at the very end. So to answer your question, yes, we have reached out to foundations in the past and gotten support. And we've also used the money that is in the scholarship. I just don't know currently what's left in the scholarship fund for DC.
So much. And lastly, my other kudos is integrating the English department with the social studies or the history department, and was just curious to know if when they return is something that maybe that's an English question. Will students be writing, about this trip, or any thoughts about how they're going to be able to assess?
I know that they used to. When Gretchen Bushnell ran the trip, there was always a response that they would do afterwards. I know in my classes I do, and we talk about what experience stood out to you most, and how do you connect it to what we've discussed in class. I don't know exactly what the English department will do. I also haven't gotten to them yet. I'm working on Mr. Votrain currently to get him to come on the trip with us. And I sent the students already to him to ask. So that could be something that we absolutely look into, and even connecting the two.
Fantastic. Congratulations on a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. It was a very good presentation. I just have a few, they're more logistical questions. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Do you anticipate, because it's 2 classes, that you're going to have a significantly larger number of students to manage?
Of course. I do, however, feel that like one of our largest classes was was 200 and close to 200 kids. So in seeing how our numbers are smaller, I do think it's more manageable in the grand scheme of things. I think making sure that we just fill the 2 buses. But I know that the most that we've ever had is 3 buses. I don't anticipate filling 3 buses with this group, especially because of the smaller size of the current senior class.
It sounds like you've experienced with a larger group, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So the largest group we took was the 3 buses. And I think because they're so engaged and so invested, it always just seems to, they might say it differently, but it seems to run smoothly. And then I think with the added security, the licensed DC tour guides, it's just going to make it a little bit more, hopefully, flawless in its approach. Hopefully.
Okay, thank you. A couple other questions. I know that it is more expensive this year than previous years. Can you quantify how much more expensive? And I know the last time you went, it's probably 2019.
Yes. So in the fall of 2019, I believe the cost was $515. And so now we're looking at $625. So about 100.
A little over 100 more. Okay. And then I think you alluded to this. Is it going to 4 students per room as much as you can?
Yes. So 4 students as much as we can. With every 3-person room, there is an upcharge just because of the places themselves. So it's a difference of $35 actually, a 3-person versus a 4-person.
And then lastly, have you given any thought to requiring COVID tests before, or does the travel agency require them to take COVID tests before they go?
Not that I have heard of. I don't know, Mr. A. Any
That's
thoughts?
I think that's something that we would want to discuss with our medical advisor and our director of nursing, whether they would recommend that or not. And it would probably mean having to make sure that everybody purchased the insurance at the level that would allow them to back out for COVID reasons. So, that's something we need to plan.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one last quick question. Is there any time available during the trip for the students to go off and see things that they might be interested in otherwise, like the National Gallery or different activities like that?
Yeah, so typically on the last day, there has been some time allotted for the students to pick one of the Smithsonian's that they enjoy viewing and visiting. For the most part, the students like to choose the air and space, but they do usually get the option to pick. Beyond that, most everything else is pretty scripted to make sure that the tour guide can give the information that's needed. But while we're at a lot of these sites. They do get like at the World War II Memorial, it's kind of like they'll give a little bit of background and detail and then the kids kind of walk around. But for them to actually choose some of their own options, that's typically reserved to the last day and in the Smithsonian's.
Thank you. Seeing there's no other questions, I'll call for a vote. To approve the DC trip as presented. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Congratulations.
Excellent.
Have fun.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for being so brave.
I was gonna say, when you take students to cities in particular, you want every moment scripted.
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Or until we fall into bed. It's like,
That's
Right.
Okay, our next item is the Equity Coalition presentation.
Yeah, thank you. It's not so much a presentation as it is a request to approve the second year of the contract, but I did invite in anticipation that we expected the board would have some questions for us. So Jan Lespina is on there. Hello. And we have Laura Carruthers, who really is taking lead on doing some of the organization for Equity Guiding Coalition this year because she's working on her, well, A, because she's interested, and B, because she is working on her intermediate administrator certificate. And this is an opportunity for her to lead this and help out a lot. And Gretchen Holthausen, who's also here. And if I could invite them to come up here so it's not awkward for them to try to speak to us.
This is where I sit for my own IT class.
This is my seat.
So I just need a little background, then I'm going to kind of turn it over to them. We're anticipating the questions that we think you're going to ask. So we're looking to approve year 2. You approved year 1 of the contract last year. We did it in 2 parts. And this year we're looking to do the whole contract as one, working with the same facilitator and the same organization. I do not think this is the least expensive product we could purchase, but we do know that the person that we're working with is very respectful of our community, understands our community, and has really done a great job of taking the lead of the Equity Guiding Coalition on what's going to work in our community. And is also really being cognizant of the fact that we have a strategic plan that we are speaking to. So just as a reminder to anybody who might be listening, which is nobody, except maybe my husband on YouTube.
It's my
He's actually not in Connecticut, but said he was going to watch it tonight. All students will be challenged and respected and represented throughout the district so that they will be prepared to achieve their highest aspirations in a global society. And that's equity goal number 1 of our strategic plan. And so the reason why we started this work back when the board approved this in 2020 was to address any inequities in access to education, academic access, and inequities in access to the school system at large because of language barriers, scheduling issues, access to extracurricular programming or other items. We collected data early on in the process, and one of the ones that was most interesting, so we collected data Equity Guiding Coalition did on. Go ahead, you tell me.
So there were 3 data collection groups, stakeholder experience, which Gretchen and I were on, and there was student outcomes. So that's post-secondary, how are our kids doing? And there's also like in-school programmatic access type data. So who's signing up for honors classes, CP, who's in sports, who's getting office referrals, who's late to school, who's chronically truant, there's a whole Google folder. Do you want me to keep going?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I can give you numbers until we're blue in the face, but some of the things that stood out, the 4-year graduation rate in Connecticut, I believe for our district, it's 94.2%.
Yeah,
Total for a senior class. And we pulled from
the 4-year, by the way.
Yes, 4-year graduation. So from that, we pulled anything that fell below our overall school average of 94.2. Our rate of male 4-year graduation rate is only 90.4%, which taken out of 100, pretty good, but why is that less?
Right.
Rates of Hispanic and Latino students is only 83.3%. Students who identify as being of 2 or more races is 33.3%. Our English language learners, only 50% are hitting that 4-year graduation rate. Students who are on the free and reduced lunch, which is the way the state talks about socioeconomic status of families, 86.8%. And special education is 64.3, but that number is a little fuzzy because we do have a transition program for students who are maybe not ready for 4-year college or to enter the workforce to help them work on some of those social and life skills and work skills that they need. So, I mean, some of these cohorts are small, right? We know that Saybrook is a small town. We know that we are predominantly white. So, you know, if you see a 50% of something, it does bear, you know, in mind how many students are we talking about, but still, you know, if we're not getting kids to graduate high school, we need to work on that. Some more data that I think is helpful. This is my 9th year in the district. And, you know, elephant in the room. I started my teaching career in New Haven. That's what set me on the path for equity, because I showed up to my first day of teaching in New Haven with a week's worth of lesson plans, met all of my students and threw them all in the garbage because I had no idea what they knew, what they wanted to know, and how to get them there. And I just had to stop and spend a couple weeks learning what they wanted from me, what I thought I could do for them, you know, so brass tacks. And I remember I was in grad school in Colorado and I applied for the job in Old Saybrook. I'm from Derby, Connecticut. We're a small little blue collar town, even smaller than Saybrook. And I called my sister. I said, there's a band job in Old Saybrook and it's got high school and it doesn't have marching band. I'm going to apply and they're never going to look at my application because I've only taught at New Haven and it's so different demographically. And here I am. But in the 9 years that I've been here, I have seen anecdotal changes, and I've got the data to back it up. I teach band. I'm an expensive class. It's an elective class. And we have seen increasing numbers of students who come from families that need help affording rentals and consumables that come with band. We have an increasing number of students who need to work jobs to help support their family and have trouble making concerts, and you have to consider that. We have increasing numbers of students of religious backgrounds. We, this is a new consideration. We always make sure that the band day concert, which is on a Wednesday in February, never falls on Ash Wednesday. We got a call from the Catholic Church across the street and they said, hey, did you know that's Ash Wednesday? And we said, we had no idea, hold on, we'll fix it. We also make sure that we don't have concerts at night during Eid because students can finally break their fast and they need to be eating and not sitting on stage. We also have a huge increase in other populations. In 2015, we had 29 students district-wide that were learning English. Now we have 77, which is a huge increase. And our teachers in Old Saybrook are wonderful, but for the most part, they have only taught in Old Saybrook and have limited EL teaching experience. And this is not just Spanish that we're talking about. Overall, so this is overall number of students that are identified as a state that have high needs. So this includes students on free and reduced lunch, English language learners, and special education identified students. Was 28% of our student population district-wide in 2015. It's now 37.5% as of this past school year, pardon me. Our chronic absenteeism rate is an area of concern. Now, take it what it is, post-COVID, whatever. I didn't pull any data from the COVID years, but last year we had 120 students identified as chronically absent. Out of those 120, 22% were identified as special ed, and 45.5% almost were any race other than white. And you can actually break down the absenteeism rates by grade level. So our highest rates of absenteeism are in kindergarten and in grades 9 through 12, which
Our bookend kids.
it's our bookends, which is very suggestive of supports that we could provide as a district to both help families, right? I think my sister has a 5-year-old. I think, okay, she's a single mom. Getting the kids to school can be hard. If she's sick, she can't bring the kids to school. Maybe there's language barriers, transportation barriers, monetary barriers. And the same at the high school, you have the same things. Now these kids are caring for younger siblings. I've had students tell me specifically, I'm going to be out because I have to take care of my brother tomorrow. So my parents can go to work. There's also social issues and mental health issues that come to play both on the parent and student side with all of those things. This number sounds small when I tell you that from 2015 to this year, we've had a 2% rise in students with disabilities. And this is physical disabilities or identified as special ed. That's kind of how they do the category at the state level. But if I tell you that just about 17% of our total district population is identified as special ed, with particular areas in autism, learning disabilities, and other health impairments. That's not something I got a ton of training at as a teacher. So like just by the numbers, we can see that we're getting more diverse, and there are faculty needs that we talk about casually with each other. There are faculty needs that are more distinct. We do our annual climate survey. 100% of teachers said that all students can build and retain healthy relationships in Old Saybrook schools, which is great. We're empathetic. 92% of students reported the same. Which again, great, but why is there an 8% gap? And who is that gap for? And was the survey sent out in every language that is the student's primary language? Was the survey read to students who maybe are lacking the language skills to complete it? Do they need some kind of, right? So who are we leaving out? So that's kind of where we are. Picture the difference, right? Last year, we worked with the Connecticut Center for School Change. Did I get that right?
Yes, there's no help.
Oh gosh, I'm never gonna remember that. You want acronyms, go back to grad school. I have a running tab of what all the acronyms are. Anyway, Rydell Harrison is the person who we worked with. He came in, he did a district-wide bias training for the staff. It was really intense. It was several hours long. They broke the staff up. And last year, the big theme, both within the Equity Guiding Coalition, which we applied to be on, we had to write an application, and the staff at large, was about building awareness. You live in a small town. It's a small pond. Everybody knows everybody. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I grew up in one, I teach in one now. But also a lot of our staff have only ever taught in Old Saybrook, and many of them are products of the Old Saybrook public school systems. So you don't know what you don't know, right? So bias training to make sure that we are seeing any barriers that are denying access to kids, whether that's academic access, social access, participatory access, and making sure that we are recognizing any thoughts that we have, unconscious or not, about student achievement and if that's getting in the way. To give a personal anecdote, my nephew that I mentioned, he's 5. When he was born, he was a pound. He was a micro preemie. He has significant learning disabilities, significant health issues, and my sister is a single mom who lives in Tennessee, and helping her navigate getting him enrolled in school and getting him set up with all of his courses and navigating all of that has been really eye-opening to me. And things that I worried about when you have children or nephews were like, oh, what instrument is he going to play in band? I'm a band teacher, of course he's going to be in band. That kid can't, or he's not going to be an orchestra kid. I'm now worried about what's his friend situation going to be like at school? Can he do any sports? How's he going to participate in gym? What structures do the teachers have in place? Do the special teachers know how to help him? Right? So my whole perspective has changed. And this is any kid and any family that identifies as something outside of the typical, in whatever way it is. When I grew up, being a child of a single parent was like taboo. We didn't talk about the fact that I just lived with my mom and not my dad. Like that was just not okay. Right? So if we want to be responsive to our students and our families and make sure that school is a place where they feel safe to learn and they feel like all of their classes in the building is a safe place for them to take risks, to achieve at the highest level and to go outside of their comfort zone, we need to know these things about our students and we need to respond to them. So that bias training, that awareness was step one. This PD will never be taught. It was a 1 to 5 Likert scale. 123 teachers responded. 100 people rated it 5 out of 5. 19 more rated it 4 out of 5, and 4 rated it 3 out of 5 and said they just needed it broken up a little bit more, have some longer sessions. And the biggest comments were like, we want more time on this. We want more time to reflect and discuss with people.
And no disrespect to PD offered in the district. at all.
No.
But I think when you're thinking about the cross-section of, a math department or an English department or the guidance department, or, I mean, there's different lenses that we have as educators, and we come to that whole child in different ways. To have a number that is universally agreed upon like that was pretty striking.
Well,
Pretty
and
striking.
it was the way it was structured, we were just
For
put it in
sure, for sure.
put it in there alphabetically, so there
Okay.
I wasn't hanging with my pal Gretchen in this thing where we talked about something that we're already passionate about. I was with teachers I don't get to interact with often, if
Across
ever.
the- Yeah. across
And
schools.
it was so clearly such a safe place to just be like, wow, I never thought about that, or, oh my goodness. And there were extension activities done in faculty meetings. We had one on, do you know what it's called? The adverse childhood experience, the ACE scores, yeah. So ACE scores are something Gretchen deals with on the daily with families, adverse childhood experiences. These are things that can impact your ability to learn at school. Child of divorce. Are you living in an abusive household? Can you get 3 meals a day? Are you fed? Are you clothed? Are you warm? Are you safe? Do your parents fight? Are your parents employed? Are they right? There's all these things. And we did that as a faculty, and it was completely anonymous. And to watch the range of answers was, everyone was silent for like 30 seconds, just watching. It was amazing.
It's what we all show up with in school
Right.
that we don't check at the door.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
We
So
all show up.
I'll pass to Jen and Gretchen momentarily, just so you know, Jen can talk about the laws and what the state is asking us to do, but this year with Rydell, both as the Equity Guiding Coalition, we were very insular last year. We had to build our own understanding of the word equity and what that means, both within the context of our strategic plan and within the larger world context, because there can be some disagreement. But we also wanted to make sure that we had a good, solid foundational knowledge as a team and an understanding of how to work this delicate kind of stuff. And everyone that was on the committee last year that is still within the district is continuing on in the committee, with the exception of Melissa Vasquez McCoy, who is our ELL supervisor, and she is busy doing ELL things all the time. She's doing the work in her own way. So this year, we are going to expand out with the committee and bring some more of our learning to faculty and do some small group works at professional developments. We want to build other leaders within the faculty to take on some more of this work. And we want to ask the faculty what else we can help them with and kind of start branching out now that we kind of have a good foundation and there's like an understanding of the safety of equity work and the importance of it for all of our students.
We're also thinking about adding others to the equity guiding code. We started very deliberately with teachers because we know that they have social capital amongst their peers and they have a sort of a combined, a common understanding of the classroom. But now we'd like to include others, including potentially board members if there's interest. At some point this year, we'll add some parents, some students.
Yeah, we want to do some focus groups with students and
Parents,
parents. And
yeah.
teachers.
And just general other employees too, who get to see kids in ways that we don't all get to see them.
And know families in different ways. It's not just about knowing the kid, you have to know their family.
Yeah, right.
And one thing I forgot that I think is important before I will absolutely stop talking. Again, coming back to me personally, I taught in New Haven. I got all fired up about making sure that all kids have equal access to education. We teach in a wonderful school district, and there are so many great things. I always call Old Saybrook small but mighty when I talk to other teacher friends. And when I taught in New Haven, I thought about that more globally, right? Like my kids in New Haven, some of them opened their oven and turned the oven on to heat their apartment in the winter, right? Like that is heartbreaking and different. And we do have shades of that in Old Saybrook, but the epiphany I had when I started working here is that equity, it's not just about one or two groups of people. It truly is about everyone. And Old Saybrook is such a small, beautiful little insular community. But if we don't teach all of our students about the world around them and how to deal with diversity of humans and experiences and thoughts and opinions, we do them a disservice when we send them out. I've had so many alumni come back and talk to me about, everything is so different. Like, I'm so glad I got to do this or work with that, or I knew about this because it helped me when I got my first job or when I moved to Boston for college or whatever. And so if we truly embrace goal one, we're not just focusing on the students and reducing barriers for students who have barriers. We're focusing on making sure that all of our students are prepared to work in the increasingly global society that we're sending them off into. Okay, now I'm officially done.
I don't know if Gretchen or Jen want to add anything.
Sorry.
Jen, what do you think? I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, so the only thing that I would add is that I think we have proof of the need for more work to provide pathways to equal access for students, because they are driving organizations in partnership with youth and family services, even at the middle school level. And one of the surprising synergies that came out of the work that we had done with Open Way Learning the past couple of years, and with students really exploring some experiential learning and reaching out to leverage community assets to build their knowledge base and make a difference within the community, actually led to a couple of they were just incredibly insightful and mature projects for 7th graders. And there were 2 projects that come to mind, actually 3 that come to mind that came out of that are directly tied to the need for students who are underrepresented to have a space and a place within the community. And one of those was done by 2 young men who are non-native English speakers. And they came up with the idea within the context of a social studies unit that Tim Witt and I had done with them about creating a Hispanic youth council or Hispanic youth group for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And they pitched the idea to us. And I said, who do you think we need to get involved? And they said, well, you know, one of the children knew Heather McNeil from Youth and Family because of the Youth Action League from Junior Yak at the middle school. And so he asked if we could loop her in. So he reached out to her and organized a meeting, and they got it off of the ground last year. Now, whether or not that will continue now that those students are in 8th grade, and I hope that it does, remains to be seen. But they felt that there was a need within the community for a space for Hispanic youth. One of the other ones was a group of students who had younger siblings, also ELL students. They had younger siblings at Goodwin, and they wanted to do bilingual story hours. And so we did some field trips down to the pre-K, to kindergarten, and to some 2nd grade classrooms. And this group of students did bilingual story times with related art activities around kindness. And they were such a resounding hit, both with the students in those classes and the faculty with whom we worked, that we were asked to continue that into this year and to loop with the same classes that have those ELL students, because it was such an amazing moment for those kids to see themselves represented in the literature that was being read, because they were hearing it in their native languages. So those are 2 really concrete examples of a need that's being expressed by children within the district. And as educators, as Board of Ed members, and as administrators in the district, I think we all collectively have a responsibility to hear what our children are telling us they need and to provide a vehicle to get them there. And if we're able to positively provide access to children who feel underrepresented, then we're succeeding. And if for that reason alone, we continue the work of the Equity Coalition, I think it's well worth it.
Anything to add before I kind of wrap up what we're going to do this year, or you can wrap up? what
Yeah,
we're gonna do this year?
the only thing that I would add, you know, the Equity Guiding Coalition group of teachers last year was teachers at Goodwin, the middle school and the high school. So it was really lovely to see different perspectives, but even just what you've shared and what you've shared, Jen, in the life of, you know, public school teachers, we didn't have time to be like, what are you gonna cover, Laura? What are you gonna cover, Jen? Because, you know,
Right.
we're all trying to service kids and take care of life outside of work. But I think that I've been very honored to work in this district for 16 years. This is my 16th year here. And any student who's worked with me, and I'm very grateful that my job enables me to work with all students in the high school. I think school psychologists tend to be in larger districts working with a very siloed population, and the opportunity that I've had here has been incredibly, I'm incredibly grateful for. But any student that's ever worked with me knows that this school doesn't always talks about self-advocacy. We need to advocate for where we think we need to be. We need to advocate for what we need from a teacher. We need to advocate for what we feel like we need from our parent or for our family, or we need to let people know when our needs are not being met. And I think that we've had some concrete examples all last year and even tonight of our students advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
And it just makes me like this proud little like mama bear at the high school where I'm
It's all
like, yes, like middle schoolers that are advocating for themselves and high schoolers, and you know, the model that we're showing elementary school students by having kiddos come down and mentor them. That really is a very significant linchpin in that representation that we're talking about. And I think some of the work that I do in a very different way than classroom teachers is, you know, talk about students' reluctance to join something because they don't feel like they do belong, and really unpacking that and giving them the language and the courage to do that. And I think this district has done incredible work in the 16 years that I've been here, and we continue to do that, providing room for students at the table. And once one student is seen, whether it's managing a mental health issue or whether it's managing a learning disability or managing a developmental diagnosis, it just paves the way for all those students behind them. Yeah. So I've seen in 16 years, just like pioneer kiddos that like come in and pioneer families, and that is a neuronal pathway that is now alive and well. So that's what this is.
Good point.
That's what this is.
And
So-
then you just heard from three people who are part of Equity Guiding Coalition and are interested and passionate in the topic. But our hope is that through the training that staff will get this year, which will be a combination of activities of directed professional development, reflection opportunities, and then opportunities for our own staff to lead groups of adult discussion, and then have them, eventually this year lead focus group of students, so student voice is considered. Our goal is to eventually not need the outside facilitators. We do that all the time. We build capacity and then we keep the work in here. And then that doesn't mean it's forever, a few years later, you need a reboot. But the point is to build capacity here, and we're really going to be working on building that capacity. A couple things that came from the work of this group was the work that we did on the, it helped us guide the work that we did last year on the dress code policy. It's going to help us implement the new state guidelines about 100% of students being in at least one upper level class, and that's all students, and how we can make that happen. How we can provide the opportunity in our classroom for all students to learn in an upper level class and have that opportunity, and to increase their opportunities after high school. And I really think, I mean, we had some other things that we wanted to talk about, but we're probably anticipating even more questions than you were thinking of asking. So maybe we should just stop and see what questions we didn't answer.
All right, so I'd like to start by making a motion to approve the $45,000 contract with Partners for Educational Leadership to provide training for staff for the 2022-2023 academic school year. Again.
Discussion?
Thank you very much. You all are obviously very passionate about this work and have really taken it to heart. My question is, excuse me, have you thought about measures that will tell you that the training has been effective or that the work that you're doing has been effective?
You're speaking my language. So there's two types of data that you need to collect in I think in this type of work, right? You've got quantitative data, that's numbers. How are our attendance rates? Are they improved? Are we seeing them improved by demographics? How are our higher level class signups? What is student, parent, and faculty reporting on the climate surveys, right? But also really important is this qualitative focus group data. That is where you get to the real heart of this, right? I could look at these kids and I won't put them on the spot and be like, hey, tell me about how this thing went over with the band, right? And they'll tell me polite things, but if I really give them an opportunity, they'll be like, yeah, we really need it better. Hey, that's it, right? And you get to that, and by including student voices first, I think really importantly, and also faculty voices, right? This is delicate work for us too, right? Talking about biases feels uncomfortable, like it's not cozy work. That's not like,
And recognizing and acknowledging that they may exist.
well,
Right,
and
personally.
making it like bias has such a negative connotation. It just means we are socialized in a way. Like my parents were socialized in their way, and they socialized me as right. Like it's who we are, and if we don't apply feelings to that, it's just like, oh, I didn't, for example, I met my first outwardly gay person when I went to college to music school. What a shocker, right? And then it was only after that became more open that I was like, oh, look at all these people I knew, right? So I think the quantitative data that we get from the state and the district reports in terms of achievement of these groups and the qualitative from focus groups, and also teacher observations and reflections. These are the kinds of things like student voice and choice, learning targets. This all ties in with the work that's being done. I know specifically at the middle and high school, because I teach there, about how are you increasing student voice? How are students responding? And this is all the kinds of data that comes out in our observations.
Is there any thought to, because some teachers may struggle with it.
Oh,
is there
absolutely.
Any thought to being able to collect data on a, by teacher basis? And maybe it's too soon for that, I don't know, but I would imagine that you'd want to be able to identify those teachers that may struggle and be able to help give them supports
so some of that will come administratively through observations, but I think an important part of PG that we do here is there's always a feedback survey for faculty, and it's anonymized with an option for names if you like to include it both on how did you like it and what do you need more of, what did you feel was maybe not so useful, what do you feel is still an area of weakness, and I think that's how we tease that out and guide kind of how we move forward.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, fabulous initiative, long overdue. But I recognize really to heart everything that you're saying. So here's the question, and I know it's tough because we've tried to address it for many years in Altair. Being able to bring staff that are diverse. And we've tried over and over when we do advertising. I know that we've tried as best as we could, but it's a challenge.
I have two things that will make you happy.
Okay.
We have our highest number of diverse staff this year. We've got 5 whole staff members on the state report, which is up from, I think our last high school was 2. And also you're going to talk about this later on when public isn't around, but some changes are being made to the teacher contract that will make starting as a new teacher in Old Saybrook or new to the district more attractive. That will help with recruitment, I think, of diverse talent.
The other thing I was going to say, if I remember correctly, you have to correct me, Dan, that maybe was it 220 when we had the convocation, where was outdoors? The tent, the 220.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a gentleman of color And I think that was Dr. Rydell Harrison. And I was extremely impressed because I think that when you hear a speaker present material and they are not speaking about anyone else, they're coming from some authentic experiences and individuals, and he has a stature about who he is. That's important as well. I think the teachers and staff end up listening because it's real. That's right. It's, you know, it's absolutely real. And the other piece that I appreciate you mentioning is I think probably every staff member, like you were very honest this evening and sharing your own background, but that's important because if teachers themselves could share their own experiences that might have not encouraged, but bias was presented to them in certain ways. That takes a lot of, you're saying, sensitive, careful, divulge. Right. You know, sometimes you have people that are coming into schools, but they're not necessarily, they're human beings. And they're not necessarily going to share this and that in between. But when you do, you realize that it's not a vulnerability. It really does bring people together because one person will say, really? Well, I had that same experience, or I grew up in Hartford or whatever that's. And the only reason I bring that to, you know, this school board right now is that I grew up in Long Island. And so we had teachers that were in the English department that were cross-section, and I will never forget it, expressions, ways of being. You know, grew up in settings where there were different kinds of people. Right. But right, exactly. And in Old Saybrook, that doesn't happen often, which is why I was such a proponent in kindergarten through the 12th grade in presenting cultural arts programs in Old Saybrook. Yeah. So you could bring in artists that had dreadlocks. And I brought in a lot of people, go, why do you bring them in? But for various reasons, but the talent that was there, but they could also see somebody that they could relate to possibly.
Well, and there's no curricular subject where you can't bring in, like I taught Wade in the Water before COVID. We're gonna do an arrangement of Wade in the Water, and the band talked about like why is the spiritual called Wade in the Water, and you know, is it about baptism or is it about losing scent of dogs as you're trying to make your way to freedom, right? And like having those discussions kind of blossoms, and it's nothing I thought about when I was a kid. Nobody talked about it to me. You know, it's important.
It's very exciting. And also, you're also addressing, you're talking about student voice, you're also talking about different kinds of learners. Yes. So the person that might not be linguistic might be like, I'm not really understanding this, like, you know, Raisin in the Sun, but they really relate to the song. What was the title again? Wading in the Water.
Oh, yeah, wading.
And what does that mean? Right. Right. And so there's different ways of reaching students, and most important, and I champion this in my own professional work, is working with families. Always. It is just essential, and they are so willing to want to commit and work in the school system. It's just a matter of having the right person that speaks in their language. Doesn't mind calling a family 15 times, like I'm gonna do. But and it's true. And then they come on board and they know there's a resource without judgment.
We all want all of our kids to succeed and be happy, healthy adults. That's all we want.
Yeah.
Contributing citizens.
Yeah.
And I actually want to add something too. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing because my youngest special needs all through school, and the work you're doing is helping other kids in the same type of situation. So thank you.
Yeah, well, with respect to just fiscal responsibility, what is the term of this contract that we're talking about here? And would we expect an outbrief on what the lessons learned were, what sort of advantages you think you got out of the program, and then maybe next steps?
Yeah, so I'll take that. This contract is a year long, so it'll be the 22-23, and it will be specific to the action steps identified for equity for this year. In particular, we're going to continue the work of last year with adults to help us, as primarily all very similar staff, help us to maneuver through these topics and to be more comfortable, kind of reflecting on our own biases. We think that will lead, we're going to see where that leads us. But we think where that's going to lead us is to a better understanding of the way we work in the classroom with students, the way we work in our buildings, and provide better opportunities for students to engage in higher level classes, for us to address things like attendance issues, graduation rate, discipline issues, which really there isn't a lot of disparity there.
Yeah, I know. we have to do pretty
That's
well.
not a significant issue here. And just general engagement and involvement, not only of the kids, but also of the families.
Yeah.
So that would be year 2. How equity grows and changes in year 3, 4, and 5 of the strategic plan will depend upon how it works this year and how it grows this year. And as I said, we're hoping to become independent learners in the out years and not need a lot of outside assistance on this. But right now, we still feel kind of green about it.
Yeah. And you want to go slowly and carefully, right? Because there's so much risk of alienation on all sides, right? If we're not careful and thoughtful about this,
And
right?
that's been Dr. Harrison's message, and there have been people on the guiding post who are like, well, let's move forward. And his message is, move deliberately and keep everybody with you.
It only works if everybody buys in. Right.
Yeah, just to touch on one topic that Jim mentioned, which was the absentee rates. What sort of things do you folks think about in terms of administrators or teachers as to improving that, as opposed to, I'm thinking it's more of a home-based issue, or do you feel perhaps some of the students are a little disenfranchised and that may be the impetus for them missing some more school than they probably should?
Boy, it's complex, right? That I could think of about 16 reasons why a kid could be chronically absent or late from school.
Sure.
I think disenfranchisement for sure is part of it. If I don't feel like I am welcome or I have friends or adults that I trust at school, if I wake up in a bad mood, why am I going to go? Especially if mom and dad aren't going to force me to get on the bus or walk to school or drive myself. I think there are certainly family issues there too. My mother was a nurse. I was not allowed to miss school. I went as long as I was not actively feverish or like, at that. Right. Like I walked on a broken ankle once to school because I couldn't have heard it that bad going down the stairs to the school bus, right? Like we just went. And old school. But speaking about schools and our role as community partners, right? If there are parents who are struggling with students with mental health problems at the high school, this is the thing you deal with, I think, a lot, right? If a student has mental health struggles, getting up in the morning is often the biggest hurdle they have to jump over. So what supports can we as a district provide for them or help, right? So that's where the reaching out, because there are truancy laws, right? And the school has an obligation to reach out to families, and if we partner with them and make it welcoming, we say, okay, like Johnny hasn't been to school on time for first period in a week. What's going on?
That's right. And I think Saybrook has done a beautiful job historically in terms of really moving away from the finger pointing in terms of like it's a home issue, it's a school issue. Because it truly is, to answer one of your questions, it's collaborative and it has to be a joint effort. And to your point, it really is a matter of building relationships with families, because if families are much more willing to encourage their child to even just get to my office or to even get to Mrs. Carruthers' space, just to find that safe person, and then we expand from there. It's an incredibly complex issue, which the Venn diagram, there's some kids that have one factor and there's some kiddos that have 5 or 6 factors. I certainly don't feel the pandemic has helped that because we drove such wild isolation because we needed to. So we're still, I believe, recovering from that in some way. The attendance that is reported is within the 21-22
This
school
is the
year.
past year school year.
So it wasn't a pandemic year, but it was a pandemic year. It was a different time of the pandemic. So we're still coming up from that.
Early data from the high school already shows an improvement with the later start time change, not to the school start time committee smart, but that has shown a market improvement.
That's right. Well, those chronically tardy kids last year are like, it's 7:55 right across the parking lot.
That has made
It's delightful.
a difference that even I am shocked by.
Yes.
It's
so great. Yeah.
really good to hear.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other questions. I'm gonna call for a vote.
Sure, to approve the $45,000 contract with Partners for Educational Leadership to provide training for the staff for the 2022-23 academic year.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Abstentions?
Well done, ladies. Thank you so much. Please, everybody. Sign off, right? Right. Sign off, go to bed.
Thank you.
That morning comes so early. You're teaching.
Next item on the agenda, we're gonna have to table it for a future meeting for the nursery course through sickness, fortunately. The next item is a discussion on the indoor air quality grant and air conditioning.
Yes, so this is something that we had a conversation with the first selectman today. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a conversation with the first selectman today because, as you know, or may not know, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The long-awaited grant was announced by the governor a few weeks ago on the indoor air quality. That's wonderful news. The not so wonderful news is the due date for the application is December 1st. Now, that's all right. We've done grants on short notice like that before, but it's not just the application for the grant that's due. The building study, the financial commitment from the community, all of these things have to be done by December 1st. So in preparation for tonight's meeting, we had a bit of a strategy meeting today, and we spoke with First Selectman Fortuna about what we thought we had the capacity to accomplish and what he felt he could do on the town side, because the town has to do some work and make some commitments as well. And we have a plan that we want to present to you tonight. Not looking for a vote. We're just looking for you to weigh in, express your thoughts about it, ask some questions, and then we will continue to process it and bring something a little bit more complete back to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Pendleton, who's been sitting in on the webinars and all of the information that's been coming from the state.
So, thanks, Jan, and that was a good segue into what we're working on and dealing with. This is the worst timeline. It's so tight and so difficult to have all these pieces in place. However, I will say the Goodwin project, having been underway, is helpful. And the Goodwin project at between 1.7 and 1.8 million dollars are probably our largest of the three schools as far as dollars are concerned, because we didn't have the electrical piece. So that's a huge component that has had to weigh in. We also did not have our unit ventilators, although new, fairly new, needed a fairly expensive component called a cooling coil in each of them. So there were things that were significant for that project. We thought today in our strategy meeting that we could at the very least apply for some reimbursement. Now, we do have some ARPA funds in there. And that's a significant piece. So obviously the state isn't going to reimburse us for a grant we're already getting. So those dollars get backed out. They're in the $600,000 range. They'll get backed out, but then it still leaves, $1 million plus that we can submit for reimbursement. And depending on our application and what the state reviews and the checklist and a million of things that they wanted a facility study, they want our long range plan, they want preparation of ed specifications. This is all going to come to you, by the way, because you have to approve some of these things for me to be able to work with Jan to file the grant. So there's lots and lots of pieces and documentation that I have worked on already and have ready to go, but you need to kind of hear the plan. So Goodwin School, I think, again, depending on what they're looking for, we think we have enough information to at least submit an application for that.
And that was the importance of jumping on the good. We knew this was coming. We knew it was only a matter of time. They tried to pass it last year. So we jumped in on the Goodwin project knowing that we wanted to position ourselves for it. That's the reason why we have to be involved in what's going on in Hartford. It's time away from this district, but it's time that's very well spent.
And retro projects like this one, because we're already in it already, they'll look at it a little differently. And so who knows what the lens will be when they review our application, but at least we can try. It's a lot of money, and if we can get $250,000 back, great, you know, that's a chunk of change to certainly put towards the project. So that's step one. And also Goodwin has the least amount of air conditioning in the entire building. They have the library air conditioned and they have the office area air conditioned, and it's pretty much not anything else. So this would really help. They're also probably the most, air quality wise, they have the most difficult time in the summer. It's in a low-lying area. It's very damp. It gets very slippery. We have to make sure that air is moving all the time because of mold, potential mold buildup. So we've made, you know, a case for that. You'll see that in the facility study that that we'll bring to you in a short amount of time, probably the next meeting maybe. And so that was obviously the reason for starting with Goodwin. The next building that both the selectmen and we all talked about today was middle school has terrible windows. I don't know how else to put it. They open this much out the bottom. The airflow is really hard in that building. The classrooms are small. They're the smallest square footage of any classroom in our district. And they have some AC. So the good news there is the classrooms, which is a place where kids spend the majority of their time, will need to be air conditioned. But large spaces like the library, the cafeteria, the offices, the interior rooms for special education, did I say the auditorium? Those are already all AC'd. So we're really looking at, again, the classroom wings. So that's a different system than what's at Goodwin or the high school. The high school and Goodwin are the most similar in how that air conditioning would be designed. So the selectman thought that perhaps we could put an application in for that one, and that he would consider working with the selectmen to somehow at least put a commitment forward to fund some of that. So we thought we'll try and at least put a grant in for that. Now, the high school has the most amount of air conditioning already. So we're kind of staging them so that we'll at least get 2 applications in and get the ball rolling, and hopefully those will be doable projects as we go forward, especially if we get some state money, because that will help offset, any money the town has to come up with. We also believe, and although we're still in the process, I have an engineer on board helping us, design the project, which you have to have schematics. That's another thing. Like, this is so fast to get all of this to happen. And they want professional cost estimates. They will not take the estimate from the installer or from the engineer. So you have to have a separate person review all of those plans and then give a cost estimate. So I have a person lined up for that. It all costs money, however, so we're gonna have to pull some money from, some places in our budget.
So the only limitation that, the reason why we decided today that it makes sense to move forward with Goodwin as a project that's already well underway, and with the middle school as a project that we think it will be somewhat less expensive to complete, but we also have a timeline in which we can spend the money.
Yes.
So how many projects can we get done by December of 2024? The
Yeah.
answer is, I think 3 is just not
Yeah.
gonna happen, and then we'll be returning
Said
one
that
to
about
what
this
they do, right?
Said that about the lights, so we did.
We did, but we would need, with the form building committees for each one of these projects. The selectmen have to form a building committee, which means we need to get that up and running. We just, collectively, if the board wanted us to try to do that, I would highly recommend that we hire someone else to get all of this ready, because I don't think
Yes.
that, I don't think that Julie Pendleton alone is gonna be able to get all those.
The
Yeah.
lights pretty much put me over the edge, Karen, so I'm just, I just want that
I'm
out
in
there.
favor of hiring that.
That was a very short
I
timeline.
know, but you did.
Yes.
Quick question. So do the other two schools require all that extensive electrical work, or are we in better shape there?
So we hope not, but we're not
Okay.
100% there yet. So middle school is primarily the classrooms.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that we won't have as big an issue if we do have to bring in more power, because think of Goodwin. You're bringing in power from the street. They wanted it underground, like there were so many restrictions there. The middle school, anything we do would be on the roof, which is different than Goodwin. Theirs are not on the roof. So there's just so many, I'm hoping that we don't, but we don't know 100% yet. So we'll see. And that's what, we're trying to work with the engineers. I have an electrical engineer kind of looking at the loads and what that would take, and
So there'll be some additional evening meetings, because we'll have to connect with the selectmen or the finance. We'll have to get all of those meetings going. And we have the first selectman doing his part on that side, waiting for language from us to move that forward. So we wanted you to hear this much of it. This will probably be a pretty consistent update at board meetings between now and December, and it will continue. Because of the complex nature of not only the projects, but also the very abbreviated timeline to get this done, which is a real source of frustration for all of us. And then the short amount of time we have to actually implement and spend the money at a time when we all know that we're struggling to get pieces and parts of these things, right? I mean, we ordered our chillers for Goodwin and they're coming in.
we ordered them last March. They're coming in next May.
Wow.
It's coming in.
We think.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So just to really summarize, there's essentially 4 things the town has to do. They have to secure their local share of the funding, or at least a commitment to do so. Obviously, if we get the grant and the town says, nope, we don't have any money, then no harm, no foul. We at least tried, it's there.
But based, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know you've done well with grants, but based on the town's economic status, or do you think our chances are good? Or is it
Getting the grant?
Yeah.
They're competitive. So the key is, I would love to get these applications in by the end of October.
Yeah.
Because the sooner they get in, they're gonna review them on a rolling
Okay.
basis. So I want to try to get ahead of the curve, and I'm putting that pressure on myself to do so, but I think that could help us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also know that my colleagues, I've talked to a number of them who said, we can't even get this to happen now. So they're anticipating there'll be another round of funding, that all the funding that has been committed won't be used. And so, just like they did with the safety and security grants, it ended up being 5 rounds of funding. We got 2 of them. So, I think.
Might get another bite.
Fly now, fly later.
Yeah, so
Or
I
like
think
one of them gets rejected now, we can.
Right, exactly. So that's the first thing. Then they have to allow the superintendent to apply at the Department of Administrative Services for the grant. The selectmen have to establish a building committee, and they have to establish and authorize the preparation of schematic drawings for us to do so. So that's the selectmen's role.
Doesn't seem like we did.
Oh, no, it's not much. What do you know? And then the board, you will get educational specifications that I worked on for each of the 2 grants. And those will come to you for approval. You don't have to have an enrollment projection, but if we have one, they want it. So we do have somebody doing a projection now. I don't know that it will be done by then, but and then we have to obtain a professional cost estimate to accurately support the cost of enhancing or maintaining the current HVAC system. So they want a cost estimate outside of the engineering. And then, as part of the application, they want kind of our prioritization of the project. So our capital plan, our facility study, as I mentioned, and then establishing, the funding is a significant piece. So, lot to be accomplished between now and December 1st.
I said October.
Well, that's when I'd like to submit at least get one of them in, maybe get good ones in by then. I think, Jan, and correct me if I'm wrong, the selectman was willing to kind of work quickly with the other selectmen to get these approvals through. And then the Board of Ed could very likely be the building committee, which we have done for a number of other projects in the past. What's nice about that is you serve as the building committee and the Board of Ed, so when the motions are
Makes
made,
sense. Yeah,
because
they're
all of that
right
has to
there.
be documented, because then they audit the project at the end, and you have to have all the substantiating
Yeah.
documentation in order to get the money, so.
Yeah, and I think the selectmen's quite sympathetic to our desire to tap into whatever dollars we can get. So I think he's gonna try to fast track through the process on his side.
And we did share with him, Jen and I both kind of shared, it was just to be firm about the fact that we don't have a mechanism for funding of this magnitude. You know, we can't put it, we can't put it in our budget because they won't put it into a capital plan. But he can put it in his budget and put it into a capital plan, capital project for us. So, you know, that has to be a bit of their responsibility. And I don't mean to sound like we're trying to point fingers or anything, but that
No,
is
you're
the
being
only
realistic.
mechanism for us to get these larger projects funded. So
Absolutely.
just pointed that little. So it's out.
We're coming.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of like approvals, but I wanted you to know what you're gonna be seeing, because it'll be fast and furious.
So I'm looking at the calendar, and obviously our next meeting is the leadership training in a couple of weeks. And our next meeting is November, and you mentioned October, so does that mean that you're?
We
That's one
could.
way we could do it. We could do a special meeting. We could, probably, honestly, I know that people don't like to do much else on the night that we have our board meeting, our board goal meeting. So we probably should consider a special meeting, which you would just need a simple form to move things forward, just to say we did the check, and we'll continue to talk
Can you do
about
it
it.
virtual?
Yeah, that could be.
Probably, yes.
Because that way, you know,
Yeah.
listen in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
make
that would,
sense.
that would be
Yeah,
easy, because
okay.
you're already getting sort of the preempt to what you're gonna be
Right.
seeing.
Right.
And it just requires, you know, minutes to establish that they were voted on and that, you know,
Sure.
we dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's.
I was gonna say at the meeting, Karina was there, you know, when Carl Fortuna presented those expenses, you know, that the town needs to. And you were there too. And for, and to Karen, like to consider, he was mentioning, you know, about creating that fund and what, and labeling it. of
They did
course.
put the money in there, and
Yeah.
that money, we talked about that today too.
Okay.
We probably need that for the Goodwin project,
Right, and that was
But-
good, yeah,
but they have heard it from us. It's not a
Yes.
surprise.
Yes,
It's
yes,
been in
yes.
our capital plan for the past, you know, 3 or 4 years
Right.
now that we've talked about electrical and upgrades to HVAC. So this shouldn't be a shock, but,
Right. He was supportive.
oh, very,
Yeah.
but it's just hard to get the funds
yeah.
at the end of the day.
I just mean it was transparent, the way
Yes.
he was explaining
Yeah.
why, and, you know, asking
Yeah.
board members if they wanted to add in, or so that was helpful to other people that might not even be aware. You know, that they think air conditioning, but anybody thinks of air conditioning, they always think of it's a perk,
Right,
but in this case, it's not a perk, it's like a need,
right,
and so we had to. sort of-
right.
It was explained really well.
Exactly, right.
And we're gonna come, Jan and I are probably gonna have to go to the next Board of Finance meeting, because we
Yeah.
wanna give them a heads up on what we're, you know, they know about the Goodwin project, and we told them what our funding mechanisms are for that, so there's no surprise there.
Right.
But we wanna, you know, at least let them know we're putting in these applications, and at the end of the day, if the money isn't there, it's not there, but we have to at least try. Right, that's really the bottom line.
Yeah, it would be irresponsible now.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Julie.
Thanks for indulging me. I get very excited, but then I get a headache. And then I think about what I have to do to get this to happen.
The next item is the CAVE tax convention.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Trevor, we were talking about the Cape Caps. Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, did we miss entrepreneurship?
No, they took it off the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry, never mind. Okay, continue on.
No, we were chatting about it, and I wanted to mention, but there's time to do it at the next board meeting to encourage student reps to be able to attend the CAPE conference. I usually do a presentation now, I don't know how many years it's been, on student representatives of boards of education policy and practice. We usually have about 35 students that have come, and it's good, speaking of equity, it's a, you know, and inclusion, it's a good opportunity for, I'll say, for students up that are representatives to the Board of Ed to see students on other school boards and how they get elected, their ability to have an opportunity during the board meeting to comment on an issue that might come up, and it's been very, very well received, but we haven't been able to do it because of COVID. So we're going to try to, you know, bring that back up. So there'll be another chance, I think, to share with the student reps. Okay.
Because they know about it already. I think one of them's already expressed. it.
They're
Oh,
aware of it. Yep,
And it's Saturday, it's like 9:30 to 10:30.
Yep. I forwarded the information to both of them, and one has already expressed interest.
Yeah.
And the rest of the conference is for us.
Yeah.
It's for superintendents and boards of education. I'm planning to go on Friday. I have a commitment to my family on Saturday, but I'm gonna be there Friday, breakfast, lunch, and I'll probably be just before dinner in the wedding. That's
Yeah.
my plan. And so I invite anyone who wants to join me. We can kind of divide up some of the breakout groups and come back with lots of good
It's a
information.
mistake, so it's not far.
Yeah, we're ready.
Great.
Yeah, very good. I'll be there.
So Trent can get you signed up. If you haven't signed up, just send him an email and he'll get you registered for whichever days you want to go.
There's lunch. It ends, I think, Saturday, at like maybe 1.
Yeah.
Thank you. Policy, first reading.
Okay. So there's not a lot of heavy lifting, just a few policies here that are significant and changes. Some of the significant changes aren't to policy, but they are to regulation. And just as a reminder, the Board of Education doesn't vote on regulation. We just include it so you see how it's going to be operationalized, but regulation is really the responsibility of administration. So with that, I'm just going to walk through these and stop me if you have a question. Some of them are related to each other, so it's the same change in more than one policy. So on the first one, which is policy regarding prohibition of sex discrimination, there is absolutely no change to the policy. The only change is to the regulation, and it's the number 1 on page 15. End of discussion, right? The next one is a brand new policy, Series 5000 policy to improve completion rates of the free application for federal student aid. It is, we are now required to help students fill out the FAFSA. If you've ever filled out the FAFSA, you'll know it's no joy.
That's why the completion rates are low.
Exactly.
That's probably, that's exactly right.
I think this was Public Act 21-199, and we have to create a committee to help improve FAFSA completion. And then the regulations talk about who's going to be on the committee. And we chose most of the language recommended by Shipman and Goodwin, though we did not choose to include language that said provide incentives to students who've completed the FAFSA. So we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We'll have nights where we walk people through it. We'll have support in school. We'll have a committee to kind of gauge how well we're doing from year to year. But that's what we're planning to commit to right now.
Yeah, just a question, because it's a pretty exciting initiative, but it's very labor intensive.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how do we reach some of those families that are non-English speaking to come one of those nights to be able to complete that form?
Right. So the first thing you do is make sure that you have everything sent out in multiple languages. Unfortunately, our website, you can translate off of our website too, off of things that are posted. And the other thing you have is people there who can work with them and who can, and also we have to be flexible about timing because some of these people can't come at certain
Exactly
hours. And so we have to have opportunities for them during the school day and then also after the school day.
And both those applications, or do you know, just from your experience with your colleagues, do they have it in Spanish? We must.
FAFSA, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be.
Yeah. I've spent many a Sunday with FAFSA.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is the policy regarding this is Series 5000 again, so student policy regarding Title IX of the Education Amendment. This is the same change as the first policy, sex discrimination harassment. It's in the regulation. It's on page 11, and it's the number 1. The next one is Again, this is a Public Act 21-199, and this is the policy addressing enrollment in an advanced course or program and challenging curriculum. This is brand new. It's new to us. This is Shipman and Goodwin's second version in just a few months, but we're finally getting around to making it part of the board's policies. And really what it says is that we have to be sure that 100% of our students have an opportunity to take an advanced or honors level course. Now, we can define that as we see fit here at the local level. We can say that could be ECE, that could be International Baccalaureate, it could be an honors class, it could be AP. We can define that ourselves, but we have to make sure that all students have an opportunity to not be gatekeep. There won't be enough gatekeeping that they're kept out of things. And so how we're going to do that is defined in the eligibility criteria on page 2. We're going to use our typical means. We use recommendations from teachers, administrators, school counselors, or other personnel. We'll look at students' academic performance, but we also are going to add student interest. So if I say I really love science, well, then maybe I should take an AP science class because I'll be passionate about it and I'll have an interest in it and I'll be more likely to be engaged in it. And so maybe my science scores aren't at the top, but I'm going to challenge myself and we're going to allow that person to challenge. Where's the pressure this puts on teachers, of course, is additional differentiation, additional personalization, but we've been working on that for a number of years anyway. And so we'll continue to work on that, refine it. And there is, of course, a brand new regulation that goes along with it, which uses all of Shipman's language, save one section where it says that you would we wouldn't offer courses for high school credit at the middle school, and then we do want to offer courses. There are some advanced courses at the middle school we want to give high school credit for. And our board policy on graduation allows for that. Yeah.
So does that mean that students going from, starting to look at courses for their grade, for the next grade? Does the guidance counselors then have to look at the course selections and have under their hat, we've got to find something that needs to move you to one of these?
Yes, but also what the state wants us to do is to really utilize those student success plans that we have not been as faithful at utilizing across the state as the state would like us to be, because there was never really any kind of formal way to record that. So now we need to be better about using our student success plans. The student success plans were meant to be starting with grade 6. Students sort of tracking what they're doing, setting new goals, talking about their future. Now we are doing that in bits and pieces, but we're not doing it in a way that is going to be organized and formalized and go through, with the exception of Power School and Naviance both have those components to it. So we just have to put all the pieces together. And of course, the human resource part is there's got to be somebody who's in charge of that. So we've already had a discussion about this at district leadership team. We've got, now that it's coming before the board, once you approve it next time, then we will start the full implementation process. We will not be 100% this year. It will take us another year to get this completely.
Because the student success plans were actually brought to the table, like, gosh, I'm going to say 10 years ago.
Oh, more.
Or 15
It's more
years
ago.
ago.
When Betty Sternberg was second
Right.
treasurer.
And it was just.
Yeah, I remember it.
I remember bringing it up, it just didn't move, but it really was sort of early introduction to student voice. It was like, let's get it in there.
Yeah, it just collapsed on its own weight
That's
because
right.
there was no mechanism for doing, and there was no one to do the work in districts.
Yeah.
So that will still be a problem. We're still gonna have to worry about that. The next one is an update to policy addressing enrollment in an advanced course. Oh, no,
Online.
sorry.
Online course.
Yeah. I've got 3 versions of that one. Credit for online courses. The changes here, and I can walk us through this policy, is there's all that legislation about what is and what isn't allowed. You can't do dual instruction. I'm going to tell you, you're going to see this policy again this year because it's changed again. But right now, what we're saying is we're going to follow Public Act 22-3. And we are going to be offering online coursework as we always have. There will be no dual enrollment where someone's being taught in person and someone else is being taught online at the same time, with the exception, according to the State Department of Education, they're saying there are exceptions to that. And those exceptions are about the types of things that we were trying to do last year with our world language class. They're saying that some of that is permissible. That's going to continue to be argued. And we did not, because we think this is going to be continue to have iterations this year, we did not include a lot of the optional language that Shipman and Goodwin had suggested. We're keeping this one simple and waiting for the state.
It's just gonna change again.
And Jan, exception could be like, if you're homebound, you can't come to school, then you're gonna be able to take that course virtually.
Right. Right.
And that's, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had teachers, they were, I think, at the state capitol, and they were
Yes.
against.
Yes, yeah, it's going to continue to be exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be additional legislation in this session coming up. The next one is policy for the equitable identification of gifted and talented students. So last year, Public Act 21-199 requires boards of education not later than July 1st, 2022. That's hard to do when you don't get the policy until September 2022, to adopt a policy for the equitable identification of gifted and talented students. And so again, we are adopting almost word for word the language that Shipman and Goodwin is providing to us, because their language tracks the law. And in a situation like this, why would we do anything else? The only thing we did, and this was suggested by Shipman and Goodwin, it said that the district can write in something that is appropriate locally. So under Roman numeral 4, provision of services, you can see a paragraph that was written by administrators that really reflects what we're doing. This one. And then the rest are Board of Education, the Series 9000 bylaws. And primarily, these changes are getting rid of the sunset language on electronic meetings, because that now is law that you can hold electronic meetings. There's specific rules, like we couldn't have an electronic meeting right now that didn't allow an audience to come here because there's too many of us in the room. But if we were all online, we wouldn't need to have a room for a meeting. So like we're talking about doing a special meeting that's going to be online. Julie, Trent, and I, and maybe one of you could be here in the room, but we wouldn't want the quorum, right? And so that's really the changes here. It's just getting rid of that sunsetting language, clarifying how those work and how people can participate. And that's also the meeting conduct policy and the minutes policy, removing the sunset. And same thing in the form and voting procedures, just removing the sunset language. So those are the ones that are easier to talk about. And finally, time, place, and notice of meeting, same thing. What's in person, what's considered a completely remote meeting, what's a hybrid meeting, and what's an in-person meeting. And we've got it covered here in this district. I think we do even more than we need to.
Thanks, Jan. We're going through that. So then these will come to the next Board of Education meeting for adoption. If there's any question, we usually have a first reading, which is tonight. We're going to have an opportunity for thought, feedback, and then the next Board of Education meeting, it'll be on perhaps an consent agenda for adoption.
Next, we have executive session.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session at,
And we need to actually invite superintendent.
you're right, at 8:54, inviting Julie Pendleton and Jan Puccio, please.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. A.
I think you just had a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, we can
session at 9:25.
I'm ready to go.
Okay. All right, I'd like to make, I'll read the motion, somebody else can make it. Motion to approve the tentative agreement between the Old Saybrook Education Association and the Old Saybrook Board of Education as presented.
Make a motion to accept.
Second,
Okay.
second by Joe. Call for a vote. No discussion, just vote.
Yeah.
Discussion. All those in favor, in agreement?
Aye.
Those Opposed? Abstentions? Karen.
Karen.
So moved.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between the Old Saybrook Board of Education and the Old Saybrook Education Association as presented. Second.
Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for all the work.
Found the agenda, there are a bunch of reminders.
So I'm gonna jump in. Next meeting is the fall leadership meeting. Stated at 5:30. At 5 o'clock, we will have dinner here, so you can come right from work. Feed you, and then the meeting will start promptly at 5:30. Yeah.
I have 25th,
Yeah,
October. I know, just checking.
just as a reminder.
Mhm.
Any topics of interest, just let me know. I work on the agenda this week.
Should we also talk about a special meeting? When we're still-
Let us
Wanna get
pull
back
some
to
thoughts
us
together on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Trevor. We'll be
Okay.
sure to get to you.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the fall celebration at Expo? What is that?
So that's that event that we decided to do just before the next board meeting where we have a celebration similar to what we used to do. We'd have kids come in and we'd talk about something wonderful they did. Only now we're doing more of a opportunity for them to demonstrate what they did. Does this ring a bell at all? So it's pre-COVID. It's pre-COVID. Just think, what was I like before COVID, right?
And where is
The
it?
different schools and
So those were the spotlights, but this we typically did at the middle school, and we would have kids in who maybe hadn't been celebrated, adults too,
Okay.
kids and adults in, but things that had not necessarily been celebrated. So not like a state championship soccer team with a huge celebration, but like an Eagle Scout project that
Right.
benefited the school, or a kid got an award, but it was not recognized in an event here, a teacher who got a particular award or got involved in a particular program. But it was often just us
Okay.
talking about them. This time, we're going to have them actually there talking about what they do. And we're gonna kind of do a gallery walk. We're gonna
Nice.
go around and talk to the kids and the adults about what they
Nice.
were involved in. And that's how we're gonna celebrate them.
Excellent. That's at the middle school.
That is, it's gonna be
Middle school.
in the middle school. Some kids are kind of typically flying under the radar,
Right.
don't get noticed.
Right.
We're gonna.
Yeah.
notice
Love
them
it.
and
Empowering
celebrate
them.
Yeah.
We're also gonna recognize Tara Barrows too.
Right.
That-
Because we didn't get to do that. We always do that for exiting board members.
I'm at night, November.
November 8th. So I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So,
Adjourned.
thank you, everyone.
We have to vote though
All
for
in
that?
favor?
Oh, we vote?
I think
All in
it's
favor?